it's really important to snack. I can't underline enough the importance of snacking. This sandwich is from lunch, and it is 8 p.m. right now.
It smells amazing.
Brennan, you are just going to like own my TV screen for a month. We are gonna we have like Never Stop Blowing Up, we got Downfall, and then of course the ever continuing saga Worlds Beyond Number. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all Brennan.
There is gonna be a week or two in July where I will be DMing 3 episodes in a row in that week. And I have thought about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's wow. We've officially reached the point where I've often said, like, as much D&D as I'm playing, I don't know that we've reached the level that I was playing when I was a teenager. We might be approaching. I think we're approaching now. I think that we might be getting there for sure. Very exciting.
We're getting there. We haven't reached it yet. We're getting there.
We're approaching the asymptote, approaches but never quite reaches the y-axis. Exactly.
I love it. I am so excited for Downfall. Calamity is genuinely, I think, one of my favorite things Critical Role has ever done. After the live show, I'm not kidding, I went home and watched Calamity the next week. I was like, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing now.
Oh my God. That is so, so kind of you. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of Calamity. That was such a dream project, and everyone that I worked on that with are just incredible. So thank you so much. I deeply, deeply appreciate that.
What was to you, because I know you and Matt have kind of been toying with this idea for a while, because I remember all the way back at Comic-Con last year, Matt said he wanted to do more Calamity stories, and then you guys have been kind of trying to figure out how to introduce this for like a good chunk of this year. What for you was the most exciting aspect of getting to return to Exandria, and specifically kind of this untouched time? Because really you're the only one that's had any like playtime where you've been forming the story as the GM in Calamity, versus Matt, who's kind of just built the history.
Wow, what a great question. I mean, number one, being a guest in Matt's world is such an incredible gift and honor. Exandria and its lore are so impossibly rich and textured and amazing. And basically, as a huge fan of Critical Role, looking back at Matt's history has been finding these moments and working with Matt on basically identifying historical moments that have this epic scope to them, but also have a point of view through the narrative that needs to be seen first person to understand the weight of that history, right? Yeah. So you look at Calamity, and it's that turning point of like there was a moment where the Age of Arcanum ended and the Calamity began. And talking with Matt post Calamity about like, are there any other historical moments that ring out in that way? It all began with a conversation around Aor, with this line of text that was, the betrayer gods and the prime deities halted their war in order to strike down the city of Aor, which was developing a weapon capable of killing the gods. Now that's a single sentence. And the level of complexity, of moral horror, the level of divine wrath in the stories of the gods and the mythic proportions of that, and what that means, it is a really intense moment. And even talking with Matt about it, I was like, so the Calamity is unfolding over centuries, right? This like enormous length of time, and all of Exandria is choked under the weight of this divine war. It is an apocalyptic setting, and that's one of the things too that we're going to be able to see in Downfall is a snapshot of the middle of the Calamity, which is this enormous time period, and the gods called a timeout to go and destroy Aor. And I think that there is so much weight in that it's like you have to sit with that sentence for a moment to really think about what that means, right? Yeah. It's very heavy. And then I just got excited about that historical period and about all the stuff to do with that. Matt was so excited about this, which is why it's so funny, because I am now the guy who's told two stories about cities that fell out of the sky, but I don't think you could have two stories that are more different than Calamity and Downfall, both in the themes that they're tackling in terms of the perspective involved in the stories. It is I am so excited for people to be hit with Downfall. And it's also quite different because, of course, Downfall has very different objectives than Calamity had. Because, as you may have a question leading up to this, in which case I'm blowing up all your questions, and I'm sorry.
You're great.
Downfall exists in the continuum of Campaign 3. It is episode 99, 100, and 101. So all of Downfall can really be understood as a moment or chapter shown through the image of the past, shown through this sort of like recording deep in the heart of fallen Aeor. And therefore, like, what the story is attempting to do is to exist in and of itself, but all like very much watchable in and of itself, but really as a set piece also within Campaign 3. You know, Matt volleyed to me at the live show, and this is very much set up to be this story that not only has its own impact, but specifically has impact, I think, for Bell's Hells and for Campaign 3.
Yeah. No, that was one of the things that I was so intrigued about and so excited about with this, is because it's not necessarily like, it's separate in the fact that it's essentially like looking at the past, but it's not separate in that it will have direct impacts on the rest of the campaign. And I think that's such a cool thing to do with this. I have a couple silly questions before we get into the meat of it. Are you who they call now when they want to destroy a city? They're like, better get Brennan in.
I think so. You know, when it's time to get freaky and scary, I get a little ring-a-ling on my phone, and I say, put me in, coach. You know, get me in there. Let's drop another one. You know, I'm looking. There's a lot of, you know, Aeor, Avalier. You know, the other Sky Cities in the past need to start shaking. It's not looking great for them. I'll be honest.
And then, kind of, because you have Madison Square Garden coming up, so this almost to me kind of felt like dipping your toe into that water. How did it feel to be not only introducing the show at the Greek, but closing it out on stage as the GM?
Oh, it was a privilege and an honor. It was delightful to be on stage with the whole gang, and I think that there's a live performance is such an incredible gift and art form, and it's so fun to feel that energy and enthusiasm coming off the crowd. I mean, I'm a creature of live performance. I did improv in New York for years and years and years, was on Tourco and did bigger shows and auditoriums, and you know, we doing the Greek and being the MC and getting the energy up. We just had, for Dimension 20, an awesome tour in the UK and Ireland, and did a bunch of theaters there throughout. My show with my wife, Bigger, did a bunch of shows in the UK and Ireland, and is going to be doing some shows here in the US in the future as well. I love live performance. I love theaters. I love being with crowds and audiences. So it's been a true delight. I'm very, very grateful.
I love it. Now, with Downfall, can you talk to me a little bit about what you were excited to do in Aeor, that because it is different than Avalier? And are you going to be bringing the accent you established with Bolo to all of the Aeorians?
Well, something to bear in mind about the classic Aeorian accent as established improvisationally in cahoots with Sam Riegel. And also, here's the thing, you know, people give me a lot of credit for Bolo, but we need to remember Bolo was not created by me. Bolo was created by Sam Riegel. All I did was, like a god smiting the opponents of said god, I just smote Sam in that moment by making his terrible nightmare come to life in front of him. In terms of the classic Aeorian accent, that Slavic accent that you heard, what I'll say is, and I don't think this is a spoiler, Aeor is at this time in the Calamity, Aeor is the last bastion of the Age of Arcanum and the might, the apex might of the Age of Arcanum. There's other cities and other pockets of mortal civilization, but nothing compares to Aeor at the height of its civilization. As a result of that, I envisioned Aeor over a century into the Calamity as having a mixture, not necessarily in like its leadership structure, but as having a lot of the survivors of Exandria living in the city. You know, we really have to envision that, yes, Aeor had this infrastructure, because Aeor survives as a crash, you experience Aeor as the height of the Age of Arcana, because that's the technology and the architecture that it had. The living city, its population, which when we see it in campaign 2 is dead.
Yeah.
That population, in terms of mortal lifetimes, unless you're an elf or another long-lived thing, you grew up during the Calamity. So the living city of Aeor is not a product of the Age of Arcana. It's a product of the Calamity. And so therefore, you see a lot of people, and even some of its Archmagi, as being from across Exandria, survivors, people that have fled there, people that found their way there. And of course, Aeor, looking for its project, would have tried to absorb any resources of mortal might in Exandria in its attempt to exert power and dominance and end the Calamity under its own plan, and for ending the Calamity, which was, hey, I think we've isolated the problem and it's the gods, right? So to answer your question about the Bolo accent, I think Aeor will be a little more metropolitan than that, shall we say.
I love that idea, though, of exploring like a city that was at the height of its power and is still like one of the most powerful, but it's in this like essentially constant state of living through a natural disaster. I think that's such a cool setup for this world that will really show how different it is. And I think that's just going to be very, very exciting to see. One of the things I'm really curious about with this is that aspect of following 6 divine figures. What can you kind of tease about that piece of it for us that will set it apart from what we've seen before?
I can only say that in many ways, this is a reflection or photo negative almost of Calamity. Mm-hmm. This is a very different story. And while it exists in similar spaces of disaster and calamity, and of being the story again, like the thing on the back of the VHS tape of like a city falls out of the sky, this is a story of how that happened, right? Couldn't be more different. It couldn't be more different in terms of the perspective that we're following in this story. It couldn't be also, I would say, Calamity was a traditional disaster story, right?
Yeah.
It's very, the like things. I had this. So this was my original player's guide to Calamity, which I've shown before. And you see, it's Independence Day, Jurassic Park, Rogue One. It's all these sort of movies about like, oh God, it's happening, right? I won't show you the image. The images I have on Player's Guide to Downfall, which maybe I'll show after it comes out, but I'll name check a few of them. And there's like some of the images that I have there are like the clash of the Titans, the like the gods staring down at the Greek world from Olympus. There's one of like the kind of Oppenheimer, like Cillian Murphy sort of staring ahead. There's one of Wesley Snipes from New Jack City, the meme with the tear down his face. And, I think there's also a degree of the tragedy of some of the other like imagery, like mood board things that I use for Downfall were like the tale of Macbeth, like Lady Macbeth with the blood on her hands, or like that portrait, the horrifying portrait of like Saturn devouring his children, right? Like there's a lot of things. So I would say tonally, we're in a very different space. This story has huge elements of horror. It has huge and a very, I think, a very unexpected or kind of hard to anticipate like horror within it. And I think there's also a tremendous amount of in this one, in terms of the divine figures that you're talking about, I won't tell you necessarily who everybody is playing. I want that to come out as the show comes out. But what I can tell you is the cast. Man, this cast, they are so profoundly talented, and they play characters very different from themselves, who and the way they led me through the story, because it's very much them leading the way, and the things they do in this story are some of the most like incredible, haunting, like it's I really can't wait for people to watch this. I think people are going to be blown away.
I love that. I was going to ask you about the cast. I'm very excited. This is such a cool cast to see. What for you is the most exciting thing about playing with this cast, who like includes players you've never played with before?
A joy, a privilege, and an honor. So playing with Laura was amazing. Laura was supposed to be in Calamity, and then work took her away, and Marisha was an absolute joy and an honor to play with, and my God, Peisha was so brilliant, and it was really lovely to be able to play with Laura this time for realsies. Taliesin and I have played in little one-shot things digitally before. We played in an episode of Vampire together. I love Taliesin so much, but it was great to actually really get to GM for Taliesin. And then Ashley was just so superb and delightful, and getting to play with all of them. I've now GM'd for everyone but Matt and Liam at the critical.
You need another Calamity, is what you're saying.
Yes, we'll do a really small city with just 2 people on it. It's like The Little Prince, but it's just Liam and Matt running around in a circle going, "Oh no!" So then we had Nick Marini at the table. Nick, who I've played with for years and years and years, and I love. Nick is an actor from Cobra Kai. He's done a bunch of other work in traditional acting and film and television, and is one of the most phenomenal D&D players I've ever played with. He I think this is the first person that made me like weep through his performance in a scene in a home game, not even in an actual play. Just the level of commitment and gravitas he brings to his characters is so profound. He's just such a talented actor. And then Abu, I've been a fan of for so long. Abu is incredible on Stream of Blood, and is now in House of the Dragon, and is just a phenomenal voice actor. His character is just so unbelievable and amazing. And then Nashir Dalal, who killed it in Candela Obscura. It was such a delight to be able to play with Nashir, who is, again, such an incredibly talented and generous performer. Just an absolute privilege to play with him. So I think across the board, it was just like a gift. I was so delighted to have this table.
I love it. One of the things I also find really exciting about this is the fact that Lewdness is showing it to Bell's Hells, which to me means he assumes it will help get them on his side, but we still have that improvisation element, like with Calamity, where the players were like, nah, we're going to stop the Calamity from happening. Let's see how we do this. What for you was exciting to like be able to kind of influence how we're going to see campaign 3 play out, while still honoring the fact that you wanted the players to have the freedom to make the choices they wanted as these characters?
So we know that Aor is doomed, right? Yeah. And without telling too much about like our heroes or what their story sort of entails, this is in this. I think that Calamity was EXU Calamity was about who the Ring of Brass really are. Who are they, right? Before the events at EXU Calamity, the Ring of Brass were villains, straight up. Corrupt. Peisha and Laren and Nidus especially so, but certainly Seret and Loquacious and Xerxes were all complicit in the kind of corruption of this high Age of Arcana, magocratic city. And it took wrath and ruin to shake them from that corruption, and in their final moments they attempt to, with spoilers for EXU Calamity, attempt to save Exandria as best they can. I think in this story, once again, if the goal of the story is to prevent Aor from falling, we're doing our job. The goal of this story is to show you who these characters are. The same goal we had in EXU Calamity, right? Who are these people, right? And we find out their nature throughout these episodes. And I think that like watching these actors and performers go through this story is really it's really profound. And in terms of the freedom, I basically talked to them about the freedom of these characters they were playing and saying like, much like in real life, you have limited control over your circumstances. You have tremendous control over your actions. And so that's really what we're focusing on here. We're not so much focusing on, looking at this like a puzzle, and if you solve it, you stop Aor from falling. Although we did keep the same rules, which I said 3 nat 20s in a row, and you get to stop Aor, and they have to redo campaign 2, and a lot of campaign 3. But you have a lot of control over your character's actions and feelings and how they're moving through this space. So that was really the playground for us. That was the sandbox.
I love that. Off-topic comment. I need a Ring of Brass prequel novel, and I need it now.
The Ring of Brass prequel novel will just be about 6 people kind of corrupting a city and stealing ether.
It's all I want. I want it so bad.
Be like, I don't know about these people. I know, it would be like getting a prequel about Ebenezer Scrooge, where you're like, this guy's so mean to the poor. You're really catching him in his best moment, and I think that's the truth for the Ring of Brass as well.
Lucian novel. It's not like he does a bunch of great stuff. He does bad stuff.
Who does bad stuff? Sorry. What was your question?
Lucian, the character that Taliesin was before Mollymauk's, not like he does a bunch of heroic stuff. Come on, we can do a Ring of Brass.
Sure, that's a great point. That's a great point. Absolutely. That's actually, that's very real. Maybe there is a market for that. You know what, Caitlin? You should pitch it.
I will pitch that immediately to everyone I meet. One of the things I love is that you and Abria have been able to bring kind of these new, fresh perspectives to the world of Exandria that has fleshed out the history in the world. What has been some of the conversations you two have had in this kind of exclusive club of being able to really impact the story that Matt is telling?
Yeah, I mean, it's been delightful, right? It's very funny. It's like, talking about Scrooge, it's like Abria is the ghost of Christmas present and I'm the ghost of Christmas past. You know what I mean? Where it's like, Abria is taking you to other places to see what's happening right now. And I'm taking you into the past to see a sad schoolboy crying. I think that the thing that we've both the main bit of like camaraderie we feel over this is just a deep and profound gratitude to Matt. Matt has built something. Even the word extraordinary kind of does it a disservice, right? This is a campaign world just textured and crafted with love and care and attention and mapped out through the adventures of him and all of his players at the table and all of their incredible choices and decisions, multiple source books. It's so rich and profound. And the idea of having something that precious and turning to your friends and saying, I want you to put something in this. I want you to inscribe something in this. It's not a small deal. It's actually a kind of magnanimity and graciousness that is very rare to find. Even I think very generous collaborators still have moments of going like, well, let's collaborate over here, but this is very special to me. And I the thing that Matt has truly taken a magnum opus of GMing and world building and design and opened it up in a way that I think reflects a generosity of spirit, a courage, and a degree of faith and trust in Abria and me that I I just do my best to feel the weight of. It's a really remarkable and a really special thing.
I completely agree. Exandria to me is the definition of labor of love, because he has built just this outstanding world over the course of over a decade, and that to me is one of the coolest things ever.
Yes.
So you've done Avalier, you've done Aor, and like we said, you have Matt and Liam still that you've not been able to GM for. Is there a city you have in mind and a period during the Calamity you have in mind that you would like to explore if you were able to with Matt and Liam?
Well, you know what? I'll just say it. I'll just throw it out there. I'll throw it on out there, Caitlin. Let's have it be a Screen Rant scoop. All right, an SRS. I think that, to me, if you're starting with the transition from the Age of Arcanum to the Calamity, and then you're talking about the downfall of Aor, and then I think in terms of, I think I wouldn't want to continue to I think that I would be really happy with a trilogy in the past, and then I would kind of be interested. I'd be kind of interested in okay, let's go to the future, or let's go somewhere else. Let's do Exandria Cyberpunk 1,000 years in the future. But in terms of the past, I think if I was going to do this again, the last momentous, epic kind of moment that I think makes the most sense is probably the Divergence, right? That's the last massive chapter of that historical period. And it sort of is the beginning, middle, and end of this pretty significant period, right? Of what does it mean for the gods to leave? And I think that there's probably a very fascinating story somewhere in there. I don't know what it would be. I don't know what the perspective of that story would be. But I know that the creation of the Divine Gate and the gods leaving is pretty damn heavy. So I think that's another interesting moment.
Oh, I need that now.
But we'll see. There's a lot of other interesting stuff out there, and who knows. But I just think in terms of if there's nothing in the works, there's nothing in plans. But in terms of just me, Brennan, being a fan of Exandria, the Divergence is the moment that I think is that's an incredibly critical moment in Exandria's history.
I completely agree, and you have to put in the universe. It's why I'm going to talk about the Ring of Brass book until it gets made. You gotta put it out there.
Hell yeah.
And then really quick before we sign off, I just want to segue very fast to your other projects. Never Stop Blowing Up is so much fun.
Thank you.
I absolutely love it. Everyone is insane immediately, and it's great. What are kind of 3 words to get people even more hyped for the insanity we're going to have the rest of this season?
Oh my God. Explosions, blowing up, kaboom are the 3 words. Caitlin, the fact that there will be 3 weeks this summer in which Downfall is coming out alongside Never Stop Blowing Up will be the biggest indication to people that maybe I'm 2 different guys. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That I'm like the Prestige twins, and there's 2 of me actually, and we're kind of running around doing stuff, because it is just so wild. This thing, the vibe couldn't be more different. It will be, you'll see, Never Stop Blowing Up with, and then it'll go to Thursday with, that's gonna be the vibe. So, I really can't wait. It's such a privilege. What a privileged and lucky and fortunate life. Oh my goodness.
I love it. Carlos said it was the most improvised season, and it has not disappointed so far.
I wanted a season. You know what? I'll say this about Never Stop Blowing Up. Here's something that I will say about as the season goes along. Mm-hmm. Part of being a GM is keeping things on the rails, and rails kind of has to do with what did you prep? What are your battle sets? Do you have stat blocks ready? Did you get the dungeon? Did you read the module and all that sort of stuff, right? But I am a classically trained improviser. And so I think that one of the things that groups of PCs that I will run with for a little while, from time to time, will think about my play style is like, Brennan's gotta keep things on the rails, and I'm doing that as a courtesy to our incredible art shop and Rick Perry, our brilliant projection designers, Derek and Ruby. There are amazing artists whose work I have to feature and celebrate in this sort of show, and I want to keep things on the rails so that we can incorporate those incredible works of art. When you take that out of the picture, you don't think I can get nasty? I can get nasty. And if I don't have rails to keep us on, you better watch out, baby, because it is on. And so that's the joy of Never Stop Blowing Up to me, is the structure of the show was altered a little bit so that I could not only follow the most outrageous impulses of the PCs, but also sometimes make them try to keep me on the rails. And that was really delightful.
I love it. I can't wait for more. And Arc 3 of Worlds Beyond Number has been amazing. The witches are terrifying, and I am here for it.
Thank you so much. The next few episodes of Chapter 3 are out of this world. July is going to be a big month. July's a big month.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Brennan. Always a delight to talk to you. I'm so excited for Downfall. I'm so excited for more Never Stop Blowing Up. And I'm so excited to see how these witches make me even more scared with Arc 3 of Worlds Beyond Number. You are fantastic. This has been great.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Deeply, deeply appreciated, my friend.
Prepare for downfall.